Hello, everyone. This is the Ophthalmology Business Podcast, where we help you develop your ideal practice with help of other doctors and experts. The topics we cover include marketing, management, leadership, recruitment, HR, mindsets, and more. I am Naren Arul Raja, the founder and one of the co-hosts of this podcast. Every listener of this podcast is welcome to join the Ophthalmology Business Academy, www.obacademy.org. The membership is on us, and it's our gift to you. Today, I'm excited to talk to Guido Piquet, Chief Operations Officer of Mann Eye Institute. And Guido is also the co-host of the Ophthalmology Business Podcast. Our topic today is switching EMR systems. Guido, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you. So let's jump in. Let's talk about switching EMR systems. I'm going to ask you, I have 7 questions ready. Many of these questions came from our audience. So hopefully, if you are one of these people who sent this question in, thank you. And if you're not, I'm sure those who haven't sent questions into us, hopefully you will learn a lot today, and, feel free to send in additional questions you might have for future topics that you want us to cover. The first question is, why would a practice choose to switch EHR systems?
That's a great question. I've asked myself that same question in the months after we made the switch.
I guess because of all the pain you have to go through.
Yeah. I think today it's probably a little bit like a therapy session instead of a podcast interview, because change is hard, and especially with changing your EMR and your EPM system. And so, I think it takes a lot of reflection of the practice to determine what the direction is, and why would you do something that's so hard. I can tell you that in our case, our practice was on the same system for about 16 years. And so you can imagine, with such a long time and the workflows that have been established and just so many things that have been done over the years, integration with different vendors, that was a huge undertaking. And so we had to really look in the mirror and say, are we looking at processes and workflows in the same way because we haven't changed? And what do we need to do differently to get ahead and to stay ahead? And so I think that started our search for something different and something that could help take us to the next level. And so I think that was the first question we had to ask ourselves is, why would we even look? I mean, things are okay and things are going well, and our business is great. And but that really prompted us to start the search. I think depending on your product, other people may have questions about different things or different deficiencies that different products have. And sometimes you don't know what you don't know until you just start looking and start talking and asking different practice leaders and talking to different vendors at different shows. And I think in our case, we just wanted to look towards the future to see, can we do something better? Is there something better out there? And what's going to help continue to help set us apart in the industry?
Thank you, Guido. Let's talk about the second question. Can you describe your evaluation process? I assume you are a very organized person, and being one, you probably had a very specific process you went through to evaluate and pick the right solution.
Yeah, I think in terms of evaluation, the thing that I started with was just really the people part of the industry. I started just asking questions of people, different leaders in the industry, people that I knew, different practices around the country that use different products. You start asking them, just very informal. What did you what do you like about your system? What do you don't like? And you'd be surprised how many different answers that you get. And so I think starting that way was able to narrow down the field at least to a few top vendors And then that's when the real race began. Is, we took, I think, about 6 months or so just to do our evaluation process, and it was a very exhaustive search. I would call it a search, and just really a race. And at the end, it really became a race between two companies. There's two big companies, in my opinion, that are leaders in the ophthalmology space after doing this search. And so we got to really then start to then put down a list of things that were important to us, things that we wanted to achieve with our software product, and then started to evaluate those based off those goals that we were looking for. And we even started to, do further investigation by visiting different practices that had these systems, talking more in detail with the vendors, and really just trying to create a partnership, because what we looked for is a partnership. We're not looking for a software company. What we were looking for is a partnership. So, that was the kind of the nuts and bolts of how we did it. And then we also included, obviously, a lot of key individuals in our organization to come up with their own questions and then evaluate the different products based off of what they wanted to see the system do. So it was quite an exhaustive process.
So finally, what were some of the key reasons that led you to choose the new EHR vendor you ended up choosing?
Well, for us, we had to prioritize the things that we were looking to do. So some of those things were to be more efficient in how we saw patients. Our current, the vendor before we switched systems, it was a little static in terms of the development of the product itself. And so it was hard to find efficiency. So for us, efficiency in seeing patients, if we can, for every doctor schedule, if we could add a patient in the morning and a patient in the afternoon because we were faster at what we did, then that's a tremendous impact to the revenue. And so I think also, like I mentioned before, partnership. We like to be involved as a practice with our software vendor, and we like to challenge our software vendors to do better. So one of the requirements that I had before we signed up is that we would be on their advisory board, and said, we want to contribute to you getting better, because when you get better, we get better. And we as a practice like to have a voice in that.
That makes sense. So you're saying it's a very personal journey that, every practice should, really think this through. So there's no this is the right set of answers as to why everyone should switch and who they should switch to. It depends on your priorities as a practice.
I think it is number one. You need to figure out how your practice wants to function. What's the makeup of your practice? How many physicians do you have? What are your strengths? There's some products that have strong RCM components, others that don't, some that have stronger EMR components than others, stronger marketing components than others. So really doing a self-analysis of the key strengths in your practice and some of the things that you want to accomplish. And then looking at, what is the best product that best fits you. And then one of the other things that we looked at too was integration with different partners. Over the years, we have established a ton of different relationships with different vendors because the software product we had didn't really do everything. And so one of the goals that we had was to reduce that number of vendors. That way we can be a little more efficient in how we deal with our software company. Instead of having 10 different software companies, maybe we can bring that list down, and then work with the EMR vendor to say, hey, look at this cool thing that this vendor does, and you don't do it currently. And if you did, you'd make your product more attractive. So that's, I think, also something to consider. But I think you're right. It is looking at your practice. What are your goals? What are your strengths? What are the weaknesses? And then what is the best product that best fits what you're going after?
Perfect. Okay, fine. You went through a long evaluation process. You've picked the finalists. You now studied them even more closely, and you made a decision. Now what?
Well, you know, as everyone knows, change management is very, very hard. So I think we knew that. And we knew it going in. I don't think you always know the extent of it until you actually go through the process. So the biggest reason that we chose the vendor that we went with was because the exhaustive project management approach that they were said they were going to take. And it was a very long process. We started, let me see, it was at least 9 to 10 months from the time that we started the initial project meetings until we went live. And so I think you have to start preparing. Once you've made that decision, then you need to think about what is it going to take to be successful, and does the vendor that you chose, how much are they going to participate in that? And like I said, the reason we chose this vendor is because they had a huge piece in this. We brought the key players to the table in our organization, but they have a very detailed and proven onboarding process. And because they showed us that timeline and process before we actually made the decision, and have a whole team of people dedicated to making sure that we're successful. And so, we started having those project calls. We created a core team of individuals inside the practice. And so that core team was responsible for making some key decisions early on in the process, because there are different ways you can approach implementation. There's different ways you can approach how you use the product. So the core team made some decisions early on, and we were the ones on the weekly and biweekly project calls working with the onboarding team from the software vendor. And then we had a super user team, which was the next level. We tried to include every manager, every lead technician, different key individuals in the organization as quote unquote super users, and they would receive additional training, and they would be responsible for being go-to people in the organization once we've gone live. And then, we went through the training process with with the general staff and general physicians. We decided that we made the investment to close the office, all of our offices, for several days to bring in trainers and to put people in classroom environments. So that was a hard decision. I honestly just saw the income statement from the month that we went live, and when you look at it in hindsight, you're like, oh man, we had to reduce our schedules, and you see that impact. But I think I had to remind myself that it was an investment in our future, and now seeing us, I think that it was a great investment because I can see the direction of where we're going to go. So the now what is just, it's really setting yourself up for success. And if you choose a vendor that has a proven methodology to do that, it's going to help tremendously, because I think us in practices, we tend to just be firemen or firewomen and just try to survive the days. And so if you try to dump a whole huge project on us without any guidance, I think that's going to be challenging. So I think once you've made that decision, I think that should be a key decision point for anyone looking, is that how much is that software vendor going to be involved, and not just saying that they're going to be involved, but have them show you what the process looks like and really describe in detail. And I think when I went to the headquarters and I met with the executive team, met with the executive of the project team, and they described that process, it really gave me confidence that we would be in good hands.
Perfect. Can you talk a little bit more about the months leading up to go live?
Yeah, we heard different opinions about how to be most prepared. There were some practices that said that the best approach was to come in on a Saturday, and bring in family members and do, practice type soft go lives with the product. And, we opted not to do that. I think that because of how many locations and how large you are, I think we felt it would have been challenging to corral everyone in on weekends. But I know some practices have been successful with that. But that we started the general user training in early October, and over the course of about 2 weeks, we were able to hit all of our locations in different key meeting points. We would close several locations for a day and a half, or sometimes two, bring the physicians and the staff at those locations to a central training location. And then we had the software vendor trainers there in big conference rooms. Everyone brought in laptops. They were able to go through a walkthrough step-by-step training type program. And then we also had hands-on modules where they were asked to enter the data. And then so once that training was completed in October for the general user public, we had about 2 weeks before the go live, which our go live was November 1st. And we did our best to have people you take exams from our current system and go into the sandbox and then just enter those exams into the system. But it was a mad dash, even with 9 months of preparations. In that last month prior to go live, it seemed like we continue to uncover skeletons in the closet from our old systems. We'd say, oh, what about this? Oh, we got to make sure we recreate that in the new system. And so we were furiously updating fee schedules and updating tracking mechanisms, because it's not just changing your software platform. It's changing, probably the bigger thing, it's changing your workflows. And that's the hard part. And so that month before, we were just in a mad dash trying to figure out, oh, wow, this is a new workflow. How are we going to tell people to do that? So we were furiously documenting new workflows, working with the core team and working with the project team on the software vendor side to get these things done. And so saying that, I guess one of my biggest pieces of advice would be, if you think you need 3 months, give yourself 6 months. If you think you need 6 months, give yourself 9 months, and so on. You got to give yourself time, because you think it's just like building a house. You think you have enough time, and there's always something that comes up and it always gets delayed. And when you delay things, that's time, and time is money. Or you have a product that's not going to be laid out as well as you would hoped. So it was definitely a mad dash. I talked to another practice probably a couple months before our go live, and because they wanted to ask us questions, and they were actually moving to a new EMR vendor as well. And they were a few months away from their, like 2 or 3 months away from their go live. And they said, oh, we haven't started yet. I feel like we might be behind. And I chuckled and I was like, are you kidding me? If you would have told me 2 months before that we hadn't started yet, there's no way we could have done this. And I'm sure the complexity of the organization matters, the size of the organization matters, but the key thing is, if you think you need a few months, double it. I mean, just be safe and give yourself enough time to do it right.
Would you describe this change a success? I know I'm putting you on the spot, Guido.
Yeah. I think looking at, and maybe this software vendor tells everybody this, but like everybody's always the prettiest girl at the dance. But they said, "Oh, you guys, I've never seen a practice more organized and it's gone so smoothly as it did with your go live." And so, I think, considering the complexity of the amount of things that we had to get done, I definitely think it was a success. We have, in the first week, in the first month, you definitely question yourself, like, did we make the right decision here? Because you see the pain of the organization and the pain that everyone's going through and the change. Because essentially you have, on day one of go live, however many employees you have, they're all new. Everybody's almost, everyone has to learn their jobs over again. especially when you did it like we did, where we changed our EMR, our practice management, and our optical software at the same time. We had to do it. We had to do it all in conjunction because of the way that we function as a central billing office, as a centralized call center. There was no way for us to do a location by location go live. So we had to do a big bang all at once. So considering all those complex things that we had to make work together, I would say absolutely we're a success. Maybe if you ask some of the staff, they might say something different, but I gauge the success by, how are they doing each day? And when I come in with my outside perspective and start seeing them a little faster, a little happier, seeing things go back to normal, you start kind of seeing glimpses of the reason that you decided to switch. And so I can say the switch was a success. It's too early to tell you if, the overall decision is going to be a success. I think it is going to be, just because it looks like this vendor is going to continue to invest in their product, and it's going to get better and better and better, where we didn't have that. And just the partnership has been a huge success. They were amazing to work with. So I think that was a success. And so we'll see. Only time will tell. I guess maybe in a year or so, I can give you an update and let you know how it's going.
Absolutely. I'm sure we would all love to hear that. What are some of the lessons learned? Like if you were to kind of go back and talk to yourself 6 months ago or 1 year ago, what would you tell yourself?
For sure, the timing of our go live, I wouldn't do it again the way we did it. We went live November 1st. So that meant that we were learning in the month of November throughout the holidays and then the end of year rush. And so the month of November and December were especially hard because they're always very busy. So that's definitely a lesson learned. Don't do your go live to a new system in the busiest time of the year. That's for sure. I'd say that's probably the biggest one. The other one is, I think that we probably could have done a little better job of having more physician involvement during the core team process. We did establish some champion physicians to be part of the core team because we wanted clinical decision making to be theirs and to tell us, how do you want to see these workflows? But I think the daily challenges of how busy the physicians are was hard to get them involved. So I wish that we would have done a little more to get them involved, because most of our physicians didn't see the software until the October general user training sessions. So they were fairly new to the whole thing. And so I think that would have been a little better to help them start thinking and getting on board with some of the things that were going to come and just get them more comfortable a little sooner. But other than that, I think that, I don't think we would have done anything any different. I think the way that we approached the core team and the project was very, very good and very efficient. We had they had a great project management tracking system that the software vendor did, and we would bring up issues that would come up over the course of the project, and they were very well documented, so nothing slipped through the cracks. And I really loved having a project management team that if I was just walking down the hall and I saw a process and I kind of had a light bulb, and I could just shoot that message really quick on my phone and email and say, hey, how are we going to do this? And then they would capture that information, put it in the project list, and then we would review that on our project call. So that was very helpful. I think, in that said, a lesson learned in terms of something that you should do is definitely make sure that the key individuals in the practice are involved in the project. And we did that from a core team perspective and from a super user perspective, which got a lot more buy-in and just a lot more input, because different people brought great information to the table and helped us, uncover things before they became problems. So definitely including as many people as possible, which can be challenging in a very busy environment, in a busy practice. So yeah, I would say that's probably the majority of the lessons that we learned, and we're still learning them every day.
No, absolutely. And just you reminded me of a conversation I had yesterday with a friend of mine. It's actually my wife's friend. She went back to school, did her PhD in education, and then she got a job as a professor researcher at MIT. And supposedly the grant that she's working on is for how to use artificial intelligence to help with teacher education. And one of the things they're exploring is simulation. So for example, like, can AI simulate different situation? A girl is crying and this situation happened, and how do you respond to it? So the AI is learning, and then depending on you, like depending on the experience you have, depending on how well you did in the last question, it keeps giving you different challenges, different situations, and almost like personally training you. So I would assume, like you said, one of the things you considered is having all the people show up on a weekend and simulate this. It would be nice to use AI to train everyone and get everyone on board before you actually, pull the trigger. I don't know, just maybe you can share that with your vendor and maybe they'll develop it. Who knows?
I think there's a huge upside potential for AI in the future. We actually found a vendor that works with this new software product that develops bots to perform just mundane tasks and things that traditionally are hard to get people to remember to do every time. So we're gonna do something that we have several integrations still with some of the software vendors that we use, and there's one vendor where there's some marketing information that doesn't pass through the API, and so we're going to use this AI bot to go just grab those appointment types and grab the marketing sources and then go backfill our CRM product with those marketing sources. So, we talked about some of the other things they do. So I think there's a huge upside potential for looking for the mundane tasks or the things that are just ripe for human error. That, I'm excited. I had a meeting with them actually a few weeks ago, and I think there's going to be a lot of potential for developing these bots.
Yeah, I think AI is going to be another game changer, right? I mean, it's one of those things where the computer gets smarter than human beings. So it becomes like almost like a person that's sitting next to you or in your team doing stuff for you. Thank you so much, Guido. I really appreciate you for being a co-host, for you being the guest of this podcast where we are talking about switching EMR systems. I learned a lot, and I'm sure our listeners will take a lot of notes and maybe have their team listen to this podcast, because this, switching EMR systems is a big decision for many people. And whether you get it right or you get it wrong, it's going to cost you a lot of money either way. So give you, make you a lot of money. So I think it's a key decision, and you have put a lot of thought into it. And I know your way you think, I know your way your mind works, and you're very thoughtful, very organized. So learning from you, I think is a treat for all of us. So thank you for that. I also want to take a moment to thank our listeners. We appreciate each and every one of you. We cannot do what we do without you. If you like our podcast, please share it with your friends and on social media. Also, please don't forget to write a review on iTunes or Google Play. Your reviews will help other doctors and practice owners find us. Till we meet again, wishing all of you an amazing week ahead.